High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the burn. Smoke rose from the cities below. Ships filled with refugees tried to escape, but his fleet shot them down one by one. This was the way. They conquered, they destroyed, they moved on to the next world. The Dominion had ruled this part of the galaxy for 300 years. 12 species had fallen under their control. None had ever fought back successfully. There were tall creatures with dark scales and 4 arms. They were strong. They were fast. They believed they were superior to all other life forms. Smiled as another refugee ship exploded in the distance. They were weak. They had begged the Galactic Council for help, but the Council did nothing. They were too afraid of the. Everyone was afraid of the. High Commander, said Sub-Commander, stepping forward. We have detected a hyperspace signature at the edge of the system. Turned his large head slowly. Which species? Checked his console. His 4 hands moved quickly over the controls. The signature matches human technology, High Commander. Made a sound that was close to laughter. Humans. He had heard of them. A young species from a small planet called Earth. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were considered primitive, weak, unimportant. One ship asked. Yes, High Commander, a single vessel. Waved one of his arms dismissively. Destroy it. Show these humans what happens when they enter space. Far across the star system, the Earth battleship Iron Will emerged from hyperspace. The ship was massive. It was covered in thick armor plates. Its hull was painted dark gray, and weapon ports lined every surface. This was not a ship built for exploration or trade. This was a ship built for war. On the bridge, Captain Park stood with her hands clasped behind her back. She was a woman in her 40s with short black hair and calm eyes. She had served in Earth's space fleet for 20 years. She had fought pirates. She had protected colonies, but she had never faced anything like this. Status report, she said quietly. Lieutenant looked up from his tactical station. He was younger than the captain, with a serious face and quick hands. Captain, I count 40 warships in the system. They are positioned around the. I am also detecting debris from destroyed civilian vessels. Captain Park felt her jaw tighten. The distress signal from the had reached Earth 3 weeks ago. They had begged for help. They had said they were killing everyone. The Galactic Council had refused to act. They said it was too dangerous. They said Earth should stay out of it. Earth's government had agreed. They had ordered Captain Park to observe only. Do not engage. Do not interfere. Just watch and report. Captain Park had followed those orders. She had watched the sensor data. She had seen the destroy hospital ships. She had seen them fire on escape pods filled with children. She had watched for 6 hours. Then she had made a decision. Lieutenant, she said, set course for the fleet full speed. Did not hesitate. Yes, Captain. The Iron Will surged forward. Its engines glowed bright blue as the ship accelerated toward the enemy. On the flagship, watched the human ship approach. His scales turned pale with confusion. High Commander, the human vessel is not retreating. It is coming directly toward us. Leaned forward in his command chair. What? They are accelerating. They will reach our fleet in 12 minutes. Stared at the tactical display. The single human ship was a small dot moving toward his 40 warships. This made no sense. No species was this foolish. No species would attack them with such poor odds. They must be trying to negotiate, said. Open a communication channel. The screen flickered and Captain Park appeared, studied her. She was small by standards. Her body had no scales, no natural armor, no claws. She looked fragile, breakable. Human said, you have entered space. Turn back now or your ship will be destroyed. Captain Park did not blink. High Commander, I am Captain Park of the Earth battleship Iron Will. I am here to deliver a message. Made his laughing sound again. A message? You bring one ship against 40 and you wish to deliver a message. Yes, Captain Park said. Her voice was steady. The message is simple: release the survivors, stop the killing, leave this system. Silence filled the bridge, then began to laugh loudly. His officers joined him. The sound echoed through the ship. "You are either very brave or very stupid," said. "Perhaps both. Do you not understand what they are? We have conquered 12 species. We have never lost a war. We have never been defeated. And you come here with one ship and give us orders." Captain Park remained calm. "I am not giving orders. I am giving you a choice." A choice. Stopped laughing. His eyes narrowed. "You can leave peacefully," Captain Park said, "or you can learn why Earth built this ship." Stood up from his chair. He was angry now. This human was insulting him, insulting the entire Dominion. He would make an example of her. "All ships," he commanded. "Destroy the human vessel, leave nothing but dust." The communication channel closed. Captain Park turned to her crew. They were watching her with steady eyes. They knew what was coming. They had all volunteered for this mission. They all understood they might not survive. "Battle stations," Captain Park said. "Raise shields, power all weapons." Lieutenant's hands flew across his console. "Shields at maximum, weapons charging. Enemy fleet is entering firing range." Ensign sat at the weapons station. She was young, barely 25, but she had trained her whole life for this moment. "Main cannon ready, Captain. Secondary batteries standing by." Captain Park watched the fleet grow larger on the 40 ships, thousands of enemy soldiers, centuries of unbroken victory. And one human ship. Captain said, "They are opening fire." Bright energy beams lanced across space. The first shot struck the Iron Will's shields. The ship shook. Warning lights flashed, but the shields held. On the flagship stared at his readings in disbelief. "High Commander, the human ship. It is still there. Our weapons hit their shields, but they did not fall." Leaned forward. "What? Increase firepower. All ships concentrate fire on that vessel." More beams struck the Iron Will. The ship rocked harder. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. But still it did not break. Still it kept coming. Captain Park gripped the arms of her chair. "Damage report." "Shields holding at 73%, reported. "Minor damage to outer hull. All systems operational." Park allowed herself a small smile. Earth's engineers had studied every galactic conflict for 50 years. They had learned from every species' mistakes. They had built the Iron Will to survive anything. And now it was time to show what humans could do. "Ensign," Captain Park said, "return fire." Press the firing control. The Iron Will's main cannon roared to life. A beam of pure white energy shot across space. It hit the first cruiser and tore straight through it. The beam continued and hit a second ship. Then a third. All 3 vessels exploded in balls of fire. On the flagship, silence fell. Stared at the destruction. 3 of his ships gone in a single shot. He had never seen such a weapon. He had never imagined such power. For the first time in 300 years, they did not know what to do. And the Iron Will kept coming. The explosions lit up the darkness of space. 3 cruisers, each one larger than the Iron Will, were now nothing but burning wreckage. Debris spread outward in all directions. Emergency signals beeped from escape pods, but no one came to rescue them. High Commander could not believe what he was seeing. His scales had turned a shade lighter, a sign of shock among his species. He had commanded the fleet for 40 years. He had never lost a single ship in battle. Now 3 were gone in the blink of an eye. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "One ship cannot do this. One ship cannot have this much power." Sub-Commander was checking his readings again and again. His 4 hands trembled. "High Commander, the human weapon. It passed through our shields like they were not there. Our armor did nothing to stop it." Slammed his fist against the arm of his chair. "Then we will overwhelm them with numbers. All ships, attack formation. Surround the human vessel. Fire everything we have." The remaining 37 warships moved into position. They formed a sphere around the iron will, trapping it in the center. Energy cannons charged. Missile bays opened. This was the classic tactic. Surround the enemy, destroy them from all sides. No escape. On the bridge of the iron will, warning alarms sounded. Lieutenant studied his tactical display with focused eyes. "Captain, the fleet is surrounding us. They are preparing to fire from all directions at once." Captain Park stood in the center of the bridge. Her face showed no fear. "Estimated damage if we take hits from all sides." Did quick calculations. Shields will drop to approximately 40%. We will have damage to secondary systems, but the hull should hold. "Should," Ensign looked up from her weapons console. "Will," corrected himself. "The hull will hold." Captain Park nodded. "Good, let them fire first. Let them see what we can take." The fleet opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams and missiles flew toward the iron will from every direction. The ship disappeared in a storm of explosions and light. For a moment, it looked like the vessel had been completely destroyed. On the flagship, cheers erupted. Officers clapped their hands together and made sounds of victory, even allowed himself a smile. The human ship was gone. The threat was over. Then the smoke cleared. The iron will emerged from the fire, damaged but still flying. Scorch marks covered its hull. Several weapon ports had been destroyed, but its engines still burned bright. Its main cannon still glowed with power. The cheering stopped. "Impossible," whispered. "No ship can survive that." Captain Park looked at the damage reports on her screen. Shields at 38%. Minor hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. 2 crew members injured. No deaths. She turned to, "Lieutenant, I want you to explain something to the crew." "Captain." "Tell them why we are still alive. Tell them why this ship can take punishment that would destroy any other vessel in the galaxy." Straightened his shoulders. He activated the ship-wide communication system so all crew members could hear. "Attention all hands. This is Lieutenant. I know you are all wondering how we survived that attack. The answer is simple." He paused, letting his words sink in. "For 50 years, Earth studied every war in galactic history. We watched them conquer world after world. We studied their weapons, their tactics, their ships. We learned from the mistakes of every species they defeated. And then we built the Iron Will." Down in the engine room, Chief Engineer listened while he worked to repair damaged power conduits. His hands were steady even as the ship shook around him. "This ship was not designed to explore," continued. "It was not designed to carry cargo or transport passengers. The Iron Will was designed for one purpose only: war. Every system, every weapon, every piece of armor was built to fight, to survive, to win." In the medical bay, Dr. I.M. treated a crewman with burns on his arms. She looked up at the speaker and smiled slightly. She had known this when she volunteered. They all had. "They have never faced a ship like this," said. "They have never faced a species like us. Today, they learn what humans can do." The communication ended. Throughout the Iron Will, crew members stood a little taller. They gripped their stations with new strength. They were not afraid. On the flagship was studying the human ship with new eyes. It was smaller than his cruisers. It had fewer weapons. By all logic, it should have been destroyed already. But there it was, still fighting, still dangerous. "High Commander," said carefully, "perhaps we should consider a tactical retreat. We can return with more ships, more weapons." Turned on him with fury in his eyes. "Retreat! Do not retreat. We do not run from one ship, no matter how strong." "But High Commander." "Silence," pointed at the, "we have 37 ships, they have one. We will win through sheer numbers. All ships attack again. Continuous fire until that vessel is destroyed." The fleet moved forward. Energy beams lanced out, striking the Iron Will over and over. The human ship's shields flickered and sparked, but it kept moving. It kept fighting. Captain Park watched the enemy ships approach. Ensign, target the closest 3 cruisers. Fire main cannon. Aimed carefully, firing. The white beam shot out again. This time, they tried to dodge, but the beam was too fast. 2 cruisers exploded instantly. A third took damage to its engines and began to drift, helpless. 5 ships down, reported, 35 remaining. Keep firing, Captain Park ordered. Show them what we can do. The Iron Will carved a path through the fleet. Its main cannon fired again and again, each shot destroying or crippling an enemy vessel. Secondary weapons targeted smaller ships and incoming missiles. The human ship moved with speed that seemed impossible for its size. Watched his fleet being torn apart, 10 ships gone, then 15. His officers were looking at him with fear in their eyes. They had never seen anything like this. They had never imagined that anyone could stand against the High Commander said again, "Our losses are severe if this continues." "I know," growled, but he would not retreat. He could not retreat. They had never retreated in 300 years. If he ran from one human ship, his name would become a joke. His empire would begin to crumble. He opened a communication channel to the Iron Will. Captain Park appeared on his screen once more. Her face was the same as before, calm, steady, unafraid. "Human," said, "you fight well. I will give you this chance. Leave now and we will not pursue you. Continue this battle and we will destroy you, even if it costs us every ship." Captain Park tilted her head slightly. "High Commander, you have killed thousands of innocent today. You have destroyed refugee ships and escape pods. You have shown no mercy to the helpless." She leaned forward slightly. "Why would you expect mercy from me?" Felt something cold spread through his chest. He had faced many enemies over the years. Some had begged. Some had threatened. Some had tried to bargain, but none had ever looked at him like this. None had ever spoken to him with such complete confidence. This human truly believed she could win. Against all odds, against all logic, she believed it. And looking at the burning remains of his fleet, was beginning to wonder if she might be right. Captain Park ended the communication. She turned to her crew with fire in her eyes. "All hands, this is the captain. We came here to save innocent lives. We came here to show the galaxy that humans will not stand by while people suffer. They think they are unstoppable. They think no one can challenge them." She gripped the arms of her chair. "They are wrong. Today we teach them fear. Today we show them what happens when they threaten the innocent. All weapons fire at will. We are not stopping until every ship is destroyed or retreating." The Iron Will surged forward into the heart of the enemy fleet. Its weapons blazed. Its shields sparked. And though, for the first time in 300 years, began to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. They had awoken something dangerous, something that would not stop, something that did not know how to quit. They had awoken humanity. The battle had been raging for 2 hours. Space around them was filled with wreckage. Broken ships drifted in silence, their lights dead, their crews gone. Fires burned in the void until they ran out of oxygen and faded away. The Iron Will had destroyed 18 warships, but the human vessel had paid a heavy price. Captain Park stood on a bridge filled with smoke and sparks. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Screens showed damage reports that grew longer with each passing minute. The ship was hurting. Her crew was hurting, but they were still fighting. "Shields at 22%, Lieutenant reported. His voice was tired but steady. Blood ran down the side of his face from a cut above his eye, but he had refused to leave his station. "Hull breaches on decks 4, 7, 9, and 12. We have lost 30% of our secondary weapons." Captain Park nodded slowly. "Casualties?" Hesitated. 14 dead, 31 wounded. 14 names. 14 families who would receive sad messages. 14 empty seats in the mess hall. Captain Park felt each loss like a weight on her chest, but she did not let it show. A captain could not show weakness. Not now. Not when her crew needed her strength. And though she asked, 22 ships remaining. They are regrouping for another attack. 22. Still more than double their strength. Still enough to overwhelm the Iron Will if they coordinated their fire properly. They had been overconfident at the start, attacking in small groups. Now they were learning. Now they were becoming careful. Deep in the engine room, Chief Engineer worked like a man possessed. Sweat soaked his uniform. His hands were burned from touching hot metal. Around him, his team scrambled to keep the ship alive. Reroute power from the secondary life support systems to the shields, he ordered. We can survive on minimal oxygen for a few hours. We cannot survive without shields. But sir, a young engineer protested, the crew. The crew will be dead if the shields fail completely, cut him off. He was not cruel, but he was practical. They needed to survive the next hour before they could worry about comfort. Do it. Power flowed away from the living areas and into the shield generators. The air grew thin, but the shield strengthened slightly. It was not much, but it was something. On the medical deck, Dr. IM moved from patient to patient. The wounded lay on every available surface. Some had burns. Some had broken bones. Some had injuries that would have killed them if not treated immediately. Had not slept in 20 hours. Her hands shook with exhaustion, but they remained steady when she performed surgery. She stitched wounds, set bones, and administered medicine with the precision of a machine. A young crewman grabbed her arm as she passed. His leg was badly burned and his eyes were filled with pain. Doctor, are we going to die? Looked at him with kind eyes. Not today, the captain will get us through this. She moved on to the next patient, but the question stayed with her. Were they going to die? The odds said yes. Logic said yes, but something in her heart refused to accept it. On the bridge, Captain Park stared at the fleet was forming up again. 22 ships, all pointing their weapons at the Iron Will. This would be their strongest attack yet. She thought about her grandfather. He had been a soldier in Korea many decades ago. He had fought in wars that seemed impossible to win. He had told her stories about facing enemies with more soldiers, more weapons, more resources. We were always outnumbered, he had said once, his old eyes distant with memory. But we never gave up. We kept fighting because giving up was not in our nature. That is what it means to be Korean. That is what it means to be human. Park closed her eyes for a moment, remembering his face. Then she opened them with new determination. Lieutenant, she said, open a channel to the Galactic Council. I want them to see this. Look surprised, Captain. The Council refused to help They sat safely in their chambers while innocent people died. They should see what we are doing. They should see what happens when someone actually stands up to evil. The channel opened. Across the galaxy, screens flickered to life in council chambers and government buildings. Hundreds of species watched as the damaged human ship faced the fleet. On the flagship, High Commander studied the Iron Will with growing frustration. Half his fleet was gone. Half. And the human ship was still fighting. It was burned and broken, barely holding together, but it refused to die. Why do they not surrender? He demanded. Every species surrenders when defeat is certain. Every species knows when to stop fighting. Sub-Commander shook his head slowly. I do not understand it either, High Commander. Their ship cannot survive another full assault. They must know this. Yet they remain. Thought about all the species he had conquered. They had surrendered after their first city fell. They had given up after one battle. Even the proud had eventually accepted defeat when they saw they could not win. But these humans, these small, fragile, short-lived creatures, they took hit after hit and kept coming. They watched their comrades die and kept fighting. They faced certain death and showed no fear. What were they? Captain Park's voice suddenly filled the bridge. She had broadcast on an open channel so everyone could hear. High Commander, you asked earlier why I came here with one ship. You laughed at me. You said humans were foolish and weak. Listened in silence. I will tell you something about humans, Park continued. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest our technology is young. Our empire is small. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was harder than steel. But we do not give up. We do not surrender. We do not abandon those who need our help. You have conquered 12 species because they all had a breaking point. They all had a limit to what they could endure. Captain Park leaned forward, her eyes burning with intensity. Humans have no breaking point. We will fight until our last breath. We will fight until our last ship. We will fight until there is nothing left of us but memory. And even then, the next generation will come and fight again. Across the galaxy, species who had lived in fear of the watched this small human woman defy the most powerful empire in known space. They saw her burning ship. They saw her wounded crew. And they saw that she had absolutely no intention of stopping. Something stirred in hearts that had been silent for centuries. Something that felt like hope. On the flagship, felt a cold sensation spreading through his body. He had never experienced it before, so it took him a moment to recognize what it was. Fear. He was afraid of this human, not because of her weapons or her ship. He was afraid because he finally understood what he was facing. He was facing a species that could not be broken, a species that would keep coming, keep fighting, keep resisting, no matter what he did. Even if he destroyed this ship, more would come. Even if he burned Earth itself, the survivors would find a way to fight back. Humans were not just dangerous because of what they could do. They were dangerous because of what they refused to stop doing. Captain Park ended her broadcast. She turned to her crew with a grim smile. All hands prepare for the final assault. Whatever happens next, know that I am proud of every one of you. You are the best crew any captain could ask for. She sat down in her chair and gripped the arms tightly. Now let us show these what humanity is made of. The fleet began its attack run. 22 ships screamed toward the iron will, weapons blazing. And the iron will charged straight toward them. The iron will plunged into the heart of the fleet like a wounded animal that refused to die. Energy beams struck its hull from all directions. Explosions tore chunks of armor away. Fires burned across its surface. But still, it kept moving. Still, it kept fighting. On the bridge, Captain Park held tight to her chair as the ship shook violently. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. Screens exploded. The lights flickered and died, leaving only the red glow of emergency power. Main cannon is offline, Ensign shouted over the chaos. Power coupling destroyed. Shields have failed, Lieutenant added. We are taking direct hits to the hull. Captain Park looked at through the smoke and fire she could see the flagship directly ahead. High Commander's ship, the head of the snake. Navigation, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. Set collision course for the enemy flagship, ramming speed. The bridge went silent for a moment. Everyone understood what she was ordering. They were going to crash their ship into his vessel. It was a suicide attack. Then the navigator, a young woman with steady hands, nodded once. Yes, Captain. Collision course set. The iron will accelerated. Its damaged engines screamed with the effort, but they pushed the ship forward, toward the flagship, toward the end. On his bridge, High Commander watched the human ship charging directly at him. His officers were shouting, trying to maneuver out of the way, but the iron will was too fast, too close. They are going to ram us, Subcommander said, his voice filled with disbelief. They would rather die than retreat. Finally understood. This was not a battle. This was not a military engagement. This was something deeper, something primal. The humans were not trying to win. They were trying to make a statement. They were showing the entire galaxy that some things were worth dying for. And in that moment felt true fear. All hands brace for impact, he screamed. The iron will struck the flagship with tremendous force. Metal screamed against metal. Both ships crumpled from the impact. The iron will's bow tore through the flagship's side, burying itself deep in the enemy vessel. The two ships locked together, drifting slowly through space. Neither could escape. Neither could retreat. They were joined in a deadly embrace. Captain Park pulled herself up from the floor. Blood ran from a cut on her forehead, but she barely noticed. Around her, crew members were getting back to their stations. Some were injured, some were not moving at all, but many were still alive. "Report," she managed to say. Checked his damaged console. "We are embedded in the enemy flagship. Our ship is. I do not think we can separate. Engine core is failing. We have maybe 20 minutes before complete shutdown." 20 minutes. Captain Park made a decision instantly. "All combat personnel prepare for boarding action. We are taking the enemy ship." Deep in the iron will, Ensign heard the order. She grabbed her weapon and joined the Marines gathering at the breach point. Her arm was injured, bleeding through a hasty bandage, but she did not care. They had come this far. They would finish this. The boarding doors blasted open. Human Marines poured into the flagship, weapons firing. The defenders were waiting for them. The aliens were taller than humans, stronger, with natural armor covering their bodies. 4 arms gave them an advantage in close combat. By all measures, they should have easily defeated the human boarders. But they had never fought humans up close before. Led her squad through a burning corridor. A warrior charged at her, all 4 arms swinging. She ducked under his attack, planted her feet, and fired 3 shots into his chest. The alien fell. Behind her, a Marine took a hit and went down. Another Marine grabbed his wounded comrade and dragged him to cover while still returning fire. No one was left behind. No one was abandoned. They fought with skill and strength, but the humans fought with something else. They fought with rage. They fought with determination. They fought like every step forward was for the 14 crew members who had died, for the refugees who had been slaughtered, for everyone that had ever hurt. High Commander retreated toward the bridge of his flagship. Around him, he could hear the sounds of combat growing closer. Human weapons, human voices, they were coming for him. Sub-Commander appeared at his side. "High Commander, we must escape. The shuttle bay." No, stopped walking. His scales had turned pale, but his voice was firm. "If I run, everything we built falls apart. The Dominion does not retreat." "But High Commander." I said no, drew his own weapon. "If I am to fall, I will fall fighting." The doors to the bridge exploded inward. Human Marines stormed through, weapons raised. Defenders fought back desperately, but they were overwhelmed. One by one, they fell. And then Captain Park walked through the smoke. She was wounded. Her uniform was torn and stained with blood. She moved with a slight limp, but her eyes were clear and her weapon was steady. Raised his own weapon to fire, but Captain Park was faster. A single shot knocked the weapon from his hand. 2 Marines grabbed him before he could react, forcing him to his knees. Captain Park stood over the High Commander of the Dominion, the conqueror of 12 worlds, the terror of the galaxy. He looked up at her with hatred in his eyes. "Kill me," he said. "It is what we would do. It is what any species would do." Captain Park looked at him for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "No." Blinked in confusion. "What?" "I am not going to kill you. You are going to do something much harder." She gestured to one of her Marines. "Open a communication channel, all frequencies. I want every ship in this system to hear." The channel opened. The remaining ships, the Watching, the Galactic Council observers, everyone listened. Captain Park grabbed by his scales and forced him to face the camera. "High Commander, you will order your remaining ships to stand down. You will release all prisoners. You will withdraw from this system immediately." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that everyone could still hear. "And you will tell the galaxy what happened here today." Scales turned even paler. She was not just defeating him, she was humiliating him, making him surrender publicly, making him admit that they had lost. "If I refuse," he asked, "then we continue fighting, your crew against mine, through every corridor of this ship until one side is completely destroyed." Captain Park's eyes were hard as stone. "And I promise you, High Commander, we will not be the ones who break first." Looked at the humans around him. They were wounded, exhausted, dying, and every single one of them looked ready to keep fighting. He thought about his empire, about 300 years of conquest, about all the species who had bowed before the. And then he thought about what would happen if word spread that they had been stopped by a single human ship. Slowly, painfully, High Commander activated his communication device. "All ships," he said, each word cutting like a knife. "Stand down, lower your weapons, we surrender." Silence filled the space around the. The remaining 12 ships powered down their weapons. Their commanders stared at their screens in shock. Surrender. They had surrendered. On planets across the galaxy, species who had lived in fear for centuries heard the news. The Dominion had been defeated. By humans. By a single ship called the Iron Will. Captain Park released and stepped back. She allowed herself one small moment of relief before her legs gave out and she collapsed against a wall. Ensign rushed to her side. "Captain." "I am fine," Park said weakly. "Just tired, very, very tired." She looked around at her surviving crew. They were battered and broken, but they were alive. They had done the impossible. They had won. 3 days had passed since the battle. The Iron Will hung in orbit above the, too damaged to move under its own power. Rescue ships from Earth had arrived with supplies, medical teams, and engineers. They worked around the clock to save what they could of the brave vessel. The people emerged from their hiding places slowly. For weeks, they had lived underground in caves and bunkers while the hunted them. They had watched their cities burn. They had seen their families taken away. They had lost hope. And then the humans came. Captain Park stood on the surface of the for the first time. The air smelled like smoke and ash. Buildings lay in ruins around her, but here and there she could see signs of life returning. Children playing in the rubble, families reuniting, people starting to rebuild. Lieutenant walked beside her, his arm in a sling from his injuries. Ensign followed close behind, her wounded arm now properly bandaged. Chief Engineer was still on the ship, refusing to leave until the Iron Will was stable. Dr. IM was treating wounded in a makeshift hospital. A crowd of gathered as Captain Park walked through what remained of their capital city. They were shorter than humans, with soft gray skin and large, dark eyes. They looked at the human captain with expressions of wonder and gratitude. One elderly stepped forward. His body was bent with age, and his skin was marked with scars, but his eyes were clear and full of tears. "You are the captain of the human ship," he said in careful, accented words. "I am elder. I speak for what remains of my people." Captain Park bowed her head respectfully. "Elder, I am Captain Park." "Captain Park." The elder reached out and took her hands in his. His grip was weak but warm. "My people owe you a debt we can never repay. You came when no one else would. You fought when everyone said it was impossible." Park felt emotion rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "We did what was right. Anyone would have done the same." Elder shook his head slowly. "No, not anyone. The Galactic Council did nothing. Species with great fleets and powerful armies did nothing. Only humans came. Only humans fought." He looked up at the sky where the burned hull of the Iron Will could still be seen. "Why? Why did you risk so much for strangers?" Captain Park thought about the question. She remembered the distress signal. She remembered watching the destroy refugee ships. She remembered making the decision to disobey her orders and fight. "Because someone had to," she finally answered. "Because there are some things more important than survival, more important than safety, more important than following orders." She met the elder's eyes. When innocent people suffer, good people cannot look away. That is what we believe. That is what it means to be human. Elder bowed deeply. Around him, the other bowed as well. It was a sign of the deepest respect their culture could show. Far away, in the great chambers of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Minu stood before the assembled representatives of 100 worlds. He was a tall man with gray hair and a calm demeanor. He had been a diplomat for 30 years, but this was the most important speech of his life. "Distinguished representatives," he began, "you have all seen what happened in the system. You watched a single human ship defeat the fleet. You watched our captain force High Commander to surrender publicly." The chamber was silent. Every eye was on the human ambassador. "Some of you are afraid of us now," Minu continued. "You look at what we did and wonder if Earth is dangerous. You wonder if we will become the next conquerors, the next threat." He paused, letting the tension build. "I am here to tell you that you have nothing to fear from humanity. We did not fight to gain territory. We did not fight to prove our strength. We fought because innocent people were dying and no one was willing to help them." Minu stepped forward, his voice growing stronger. "Earth will not conquer. Earth will not dominate. We do not seek to rule the galaxy or control other species. But I will tell you what Earth will do. We will not stand by while the helpless suffer. We will not ignore cries for help. We will not let fear stop us from doing what is right." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of worlds. "If that makes us dangerous, then so be it. If standing up for the innocent makes us a threat, then we accept that label. But know this, we will never be the ones to start a war. We will only be the ones to end them." The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly one representative began to clap, then another, then a dozen. Soon the entire chamber was filled with the sound of applause. Not all of it was friendly. Some species clapped because they were grateful, some clapped because they were relieved, and some clapped because they were terrified and did not know what else to do. But they all understood one thing: humanity had changed the galaxy forever. Back on the Captain Park visited the graves of her fallen crew. 14 markers stood in a row, each one bearing a name and a simple inscription. They gave everything. She knelt before them, her head bowed. The wind blew gently across the field, carrying the smell of flowers that they had placed around each grave. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am sorry I could not bring you home, but I promise you your sacrifice meant something. They are free because of you. They will never forget what we did here, and neither will the galaxy." Lieutenant approached quietly and stood beside her. He said nothing for a long moment, simply paying his respects to the fallen. "Captain," he finally said, "the news feeds are reporting that the Dominion is falling apart. Without, the conquered territories are starting to rebel. 3 species have already declared independence." Captain Park nodded slowly. They built their empire on fear. Once that fear was broken, everything else followed. "What happens now?" asked. "Other species are asking Earth for alliances. They want our protection, our help." Park stood up and looked at the stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. So many worlds out there. So many species, so many stories yet to be told. "Now we keep going," she said. "We help where we can. We protect those who need protection. We show the galaxy that strength and compassion can exist together." She turned to face her lieutenant with a small smile. "That is what humans do, Lieutenant. We keep going. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how impossible it seems, we never stop moving forward." Return the smile. "The crew is ready to follow you anywhere, Captain, whatever comes next." Captain Park looked one last time at the graves of her fallen crew. Then she straightened her shoulders and walked back toward the shuttle that would take her to the Iron Will. The ship would be repaired, the crew would heal, and humanity would continue its journey among the stars. The galaxy had seen what Earth could do when pushed. They had witnessed human determination, human courage, and human compassion. They had learned that this young species from a small blue planet was not to be underestimated. And somewhere in the depths of space, other empires heard the story of the Iron Will. They heard how one ship had broken the unbreakable. They heard about the captain who never surrendered. And they learned something that would change galactic politics forever. They learned to fear humanity. Not because humans were cruel, not because humans were conquerors, but because humans would never stop fighting for what was right. And that was the most terrifying thing of all.